did that. Start recording. There we go. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Division of Adult Education monthly webinar in December. I hope everyone is doing well and enjoying this beautiful day. Here is our agenda, and I will turn it over to Christine.
Good morning, everyone. I just have a couple of quick announcements before we get to all the fun stuff that you want to hear from Amanda. I want to remind you all that the Advancing Equity in Adult Education course is now available for sign up. This course will, bring together adult education practitioners to develop a common language for advancing equity, to explore the concept of leading with racial equity, and to hopefully operationalize changes in our work that advance equity for students enrolled in adult ed programs. It's an 8-week course with both synchronous and asynchronous activities. Participants will work it through in modules. The modules have a variety of content or types of content, articles, videos, discussions, and opportunities for reflection. There will be 3 live webinars that will be required. I encourage you, I had been asked for this course for a year now. That's how long it took us to really get a good one together. And I know many of you were waiting for something like this. So I encourage you to sign up in groups if you can. Individuals are allowed to participate, obviously, but I really think it's something that if a team from an agency could join together, you could maybe really move the needle at your agency on this topic. So the email went out yesterday. The course is available in the portal for sign up. And if you have questions about signing up, you can contact portal support. If you have questions about the content of the course, you can certainly contact me. Could everyone mute themselves if you're not muted? I'm hearing a little bit of background noise. Okay. I just want to tell you all, many of you may have heard about this initiative. It's called Skill Up PA. And it's a suite of free training resources provided to Pennsylvania by a company named Metrics. And anyone with a PA Career Link online Keystone ID can access. So the way you get that account is by signing up online. You don't need to do anything else. So you could have your students just go to Career Link and sign up for this Keystone ID if they don't already have one. However, what I would recommend you do is talk to your workforce development technical assistant. So that's either Kaylin, Chrissy, or Emily. And they might be able to make some suggestions about how you could best support your students in doing this so that they really, gain something, and it's not just poking around looking at things, but that it really meets, your students' objectives and goals. To that end, they're going to be offering a webinar. One of the Friday webinars in January will be on the topic of Skill Up PA, and so you'll hear a lot more about it then. At the very least, I think you should probably, if you're going to present this to your students, help them sign up. It'll help them learn about the PA Career Link. Maybe you could, do a warm handoff for that so that they can access these free training resources that Pennsylvania is making available to everybody. Oh, okay. Yes. Amanda just reminded me. Many of these trainings are perhaps at a higher level than some of your students may be ready for. I myself went and just poked around and looked at the ones that were labeled like digital literacy. And I did feel like it wasn't beginning digital literacy. It was for somebody who already had some background in understanding about computers. Some of the vocabulary used, might be difficult. for someone who's not already aware. So I think, the judicious use of these could be important, but that's another reason why you should really, if your students are going to sign up, you should, provide some guidance to them and connect them with the appropriate people at the PA Career Link, so they're not just in there, again, just wasting their time on things that aren't for them to meet the goals that they've set for themselves. And due to the rousing success of last year's technology conference, we will be having our second annual Pennsylvania Adult Ed Technology Conference the week of February 14th to the 16th. Right now, we're working on accepting proposals. We would really like the focus to be on teacher practice. We want to hear from all of you. I know we've monitored programs, the advisors talk to their programs. I know there's good stuff going on out there. So we want you to share that information with your colleagues. And then there's also a focus on technology to improve the non-instructional aspect of programs. And again, I've seen a couple things on monitoring visits that I was pretty impressed with. So you know who you are. I think you should put a proposal together and share that information. If you have any questions about the technology conference, you can contact Chuck Klinger. I put his email on the slide, cklinger@tiu11.org. So I encourage all of you to think about your great practices and put in a proposal, and then obviously to attend the conference to learn from your colleagues. And I think now I'm going to turn it back to Amanda. Thank you very much.
And just checking to see if there were any questions put into the chat, and it doesn't look like there are. Okay, so last month I talked to you about the additional assessment funds, and we got some questions, created a frequently asked questions document to go on, which has been posted to the Pennsylvania Adult Education Resources website. So, before you contact your advisor with questions, please double check the FAQs to see if they are already addressed. Then you will email your plan to your advisor. Your advisor may require additional information, may require revisions. Your advisor may come to me and discuss the allowability of some of the proposed activities or expenditures, and we'll discuss them, and you will work with your advisor to get it to the point where it is acceptable, and then we will, and then hopefully they'll be able to approve it. And for some reason, my notes have disappeared. Then we will send, so reminder, no program is required to request any additional funds. That's not necessary. Then in January, for proposals that have been accepted so far, we will send a notification of revised funding. So every year we send a notification of funding letter to you. This is a letter that is a notification of revised funding. And then once you receive that and you get, I'm sorry, my notes disappeared. So we're moving around to try and get me to be able to see some other notes. So we will create a funding adjustment in eGrants, and you will submit a budget to reflect exactly what you put in the budget proposal that you emailed to the advisor. In the plan is for in the 064, the plan at this point is for it to be a new sub-project. And then in the 054, there will be a specific set section that's called additional assessment funds. Once we have that built in eGrants, we will provide the agencies who are getting the funding will provide you with more information about how to complete that. We will then upload the approved proposals, the narrative into the grant application, so we have a record of that, but you will need to do the budget in eGrants as a funding adjustment in order to actually get the funds. So that is the process. Okay.
Let's see if we have any questions.
No, you do not need to get proposals in by the end of December. It's just for those people who have submitted proposals and we've approved them, the earliest I'm going to be able to get them done and to you is January. But as I had said before, you know, if you need to wait a little bit of time, you know, if you're still in the planning process, you can continue to submit your proposals to your advisors. There's no hard deadline other than the fact that in order for you to actually be approved to get the funds through the entire approval process, including comptrollers, it generally has to be taken care of sometime in April. Any more questions about that?
I don't see any in the chat, so.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. Now the next slide is around informal assessments to place students. So right after the pandemic hit, we state offices received guidance from OCTAE regarding determining eligibility for adult ed services without standardized assessments. And they indicated that programs could use informal assessments to determine eligibility. Given the ongoing nature of the current pandemic, we have included that in this year's assessment policy. It still kind of refers to stay-at-home orders, but we recognize that you know, while there's no state level stay-at-home order, you may have local ones, and you may also have students who don't feel comfortable coming in person. You may be providing services in correctional facilities that you're not allowed to go into on a regular basis and so on. So we have left the option for informal assessments to determine eligibility and kind of place students in class into the appropriate services. However, that does not relieve you of the responsibility to get a standardized assessment as soon as possible, because a person who is in your program still eventually must be assigned to an educational functioning level and must show measurable skill gain. And without a standardized test, what that means is we as the division decide which one of the educational functioning levels that student is assigned to. And the only way such students can show a measurable skill gain for federal reporting is either by earning a high school equivalency or by exiting the adult ed program and enrolling in post-secondary education during the program year. So, you know, if you have a student who you have assessed informally in order to determine that they need the services and in order to allow them to enter your program and begin receiving services, that is fine as an exception and as a kind of temporary resolution. But you do really need to work on getting those standardized assessments. You know, for those of you who are in corrections education, I understand that there are challenges to that. But in working with the correctional facility, you need to let them know that part of providing services to that facility is that you need to do standardized assessments. And that they need to work with you to figure out a way to make that happen so that you can meet the obligations under the funding that you are using to provide those services. So I appreciate the fact that many of you have figured out ways to continue providing services in some of the facilities. I understand that many of you were not able to do that, and that's completely understandable. You are kind of at the mercy of the correctional facility and what they're willing to do to work with you. But please let us know, please let them know that you do need to figure out a way to get individuals formally assessed so that you can meet your obligations.
So we have a question in the chat. Does that mean that students who get a standardized assessment post 30 days of enrollment can still count towards enrollment?
For the correctional facilities, we could allow that flexibility. Yes, but they still then need to go, at whatever point they get that assessment, they have to have the sufficient number of hours of instruction after that assessment is given in order to be post-tested. So, I think you really need to be working. So at this point, the pandemic isn't something that we're going to get through and we're going to go back to the way we used to do it, right? I think we just need to recognize that this is the new way that we're going to do these things. And so if you're working with a correctional facility, you need to work with them to figure out a way to get the students assessed per assessment policy with as few exceptions as possible. And I do know that there are some programs that have worked things out to be able to do assessments in visitation rooms and things like that. So you may want to reach out to some of your peers to find out what they've been able to do. Okay. So some reminders around data. So our policy says that you must enter data within 14 days of collection. To clarify, collection does not mean the day that you finally get the data to your data entry person to enter. Collection means it's the day that you get the data. So if a student takes an assessment on December 1st, that is the date of collection of the assessment data. And that assessment must be in eData no later than December 14th. This 14-day requirement applies to attendance for classes, groups, and pairs as well. We also have something, and this is a reminder, we've been saying this for a while now, but there still seem to be agencies who are not doing it or who have concerns about it. All individuals who, per WIOA regulation, demonstrate intent to participate in a WIOA service must be reported to us or reported to the feds as reportable individuals. So for WIOA, there are participants, and within Title II, a participant is an individual who has received 12 or more hours of service. We also have to report on Table 2A in the National Reporting System. We have to provide information on what WIOA calls reportable individuals. And those are individuals who have shown intent but do not achieve participant status. For our purposes, that is someone who has completed the intake form. So in other words, you have all of the information that you need in order to enter them into eData, but did not reach 12 hours of instruction. You must enter those people in eData. We still have programs who are asking the eData tech support to delete those individuals. That's not allowable. You can't delete them and you must enter them. We report them. So, if someone has an intake form, they have spent enough time with you to indicate intent to participate in the services, and so they go in eData. And those people really should be entered within that 14-day time period. We recognize that sometimes you have individuals who come in and complete an orientation with you, and who, through that orientation, determine that maybe right now isn't the time for them to participate in adult education, and so they do not take an assessment, which is one of the reasons we say, really you want to do an orientation first so that the individuals understand what they are going to be participating in and the type of commitment that they have to make to succeeding, and to help them address the barriers to participation. And if they, with your help, recognize that maybe right now isn't the time for them to be able to do this, they may have completed the intake form, but make the decision not to continue with the process by taking an assessment, but may in fact decide to come back at a later date. In that case, where it's a very, very clear statement, you could hold on to that individual's intake form, and then at the point that they return to your program to actually take the assessment and be assessed and enroll, and enter them at that point. But other than that, if you just have somebody who comes, takes an assessment, and shows up for one class and then never comes back, or they take the assessment and they never go to class at all, those people need to be entered in eData within that 14-day period. Another reminder about data entry is that all standardized assessments that you give to an individual should be entered in eData. I think most of you do that, but if you give, for example, if you give both the CASAS goals reading and the CASAS goals math, please enter both of those assessments. Now, we've had people saying, okay, we start out, we give them both the reading and the math, and then we determine that the student really wants to work on the math. Is it okay if we only post-test them on the math? And yes, that's fine. But even if the person decides that they're only going to work on math, we want you to still enter that reading assessment, because that does give us the full picture. The other thing is that for federal reporting, in table 4, and this is complicated, which is why we don't apply it to local programs. If a person shows any type of educational functioning level gain, it gets reported as a measurable skill gain, regardless of which test it was on. So we ask that, I'm sorry, that's not correct. It's regardless of what their entry level was. So for example, if you give someone a CASAS goals reading and they score at low intermediate, and you give them a CASAS goal math and they score at a high intermediate, and then you post-test them on the math and they go up one level, and I'm sorry, I'm using the old level. So let me restate that. You give somebody a CASAS reading and they score at ABA level 3. You give them a math, they score at ABE level 4. They work on the math and they post-test at ABE level 5. That counts as a measurable skill gain for the ABE level 3 test, even though it was the post test for the ABE level 4. I'm not sure how clear that is, but and that's for federal reporting, not for agency. But so putting all of your assessments into eData gives us a full picture and allows us to report the full picture of what you're doing. Also, if you look on the slide, there's a reference to a table 4A, which is a relatively new table under WIOA, which allows us to show all of the educational functioning level gains that our students get. So that's one place where we as a state can say, okay, this person only showed one measurable skill gain in a period of participation, but they actually showed gain on both of the tests that they took. They showed a gain in math and they showed a gain in reading. So putting all of the assessments into the system supports your work because you have all of the information in there, and it supports our reporting at the federal level because it shows all of the work that you have done with them and all of their outcomes.
Questions? Oh, yeah.
And a continuation of data reminders, please enter all staff working on division funded activities in eData. Again, and I did not put a link to this table, on table 7 in the national reporting system, we report on staff in adult education programs. And you know, you're obviously very good about entering teachers and tutors because you have to assign them to classes and they have to be there in order to report attendance. However, we feel like a lot of programs are not putting all staff who are working on division funded activities, regardless of whether you're paid from our grants or not. If the person is providing some services to support our division funded programs, please put them in eData. Another kind of inconsistency that we've seen is that the adult ed experience, which is kind of like less than 1 year, 1 to 3 years, more than 3 years, does not get updated from 1 year to the next. And so it does not align with the adult education start date. So we might have people who have an adult education start date of 5 years ago, but their adult ed experience is saying less than 1 year. And, you know, unfortunately, the system is not designed to update automatically. So, and please double check the primary position each year when you roll over a staff member or when you're entering one. One area that we have seen a lot of errors is in the primary position used for classroom aides and primary position used for tutors. And I double checked the manual glossary, and this is what is in the manual glossary. Tutors should be identified primary position of adult educator. A classroom aide is adult educator paraprofessional. So we would ask that you double check your data in those categories to make sure that those are correct.
We do have a question in the chat. I'm assuming the staff data also applies for staff who are contributing time as match. Is that correct?
Yes, please. Thank you. That's a good question. Thank you. Yes. And this is our last slide. As we have been doing our monitoring reviews of programs, we have found out that a lot of programs are using additional data collection systems. So what I will say is we understand that many of you receive funding from multiple sources. eData is not designed it allows you to enter some information related to other funding sources, but it is not designed to be the full data collection system for your agencies. It is designed to collect data that we need for federal reporting purposes. So a couple of things. Data that are collected for the services that you provide with our funding must be entered into eData within 14 days. Our eData takes priority over your local systems when it comes to the data related to our programming. We have had programs say to us that they get the data into their local system within 14 days, and then eventually they get it into eData. That's not okay. You get it into eData within 14 days. The other thing is regarding the cost of those systems, because they aren't necessarily inexpensive. We provide eData to you at no charge. It is paid for at the state level. It is a PDE system, and we are charged administrative funds to cover the cost of maintaining it and updating it. So if you have a local data collection system, one, we don't require it. Therefore, the cost of it can only be covered for the period of time on our grants for the period of time that eData is closed, which this year would have been July and part of August. Because at that point, once eData is open, you should be using eData and you do not need an alternative data collection system for our purposes. Any costs that you charge to our grant must be charged to 2,300. You are using it for administrative purposes. The cost has to be allocated. So even if you are charging our grants for it for those first 2 months, you're also using it for a variety of other programs, and you need to distribute the cost of the program across them following a cost allocation method, which is documented. And beyond that short period of time where you might need this alternative system because eData is closed down, any staff time paid or any costs associated with entering data into your other data collection system are not allowable expenses on our grants. You don't, it's, so, you know, we use eData, you report data into eData. The time that people spend entering data into eData is chargeable to our grants. Data entry into other systems for your own administrative and tracking purposes is administrative costs charged to other sources.
I don't see any questions in the chat. So if you do have any questions, that's our final slide for the day. So if you do have questions, please type them in the chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask a question. We'll hang out for another couple minutes while you think about that if you have questions. Back to assessment. Can an assessor test students in both 064 and 054?
Yes. I mean, if you use different assessments for 054 and 064, then the person has to be trained in whatever assessments they use. If that assessor is going to be administering some of the family literacy associated assessments, such as the SERI or the early childhood assessments, then that person obviously has to be trained to give them, but you don't have to have a separate assessor for different grants. No.
I don't see any other questions. We'll wait another minute just in case. Again, feel free to unmute if you have a question for Amanda.
Christine, I have,
I guess.
this is Kelly.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Hi, back to the metrics learning and skills lab. We've been talking a lot about that with our CareerLink partners. And I just wondered if at any point in time in the future, if you foresee that some of those hours will be allowable to be counted for distance learning for any of the modules in there.
That's a thought.
We have not thought about that. You know, I guess one of the concerns would be, you know, it's training, and we don't, unless it happens within an integrated education and training activity, training is not an allowable activity under Title II funds. The other concern I would have would be, would it support the type of learning that is supposed to happen under Title II versus the training that would happen under Title I? So, you know, if they're doing a lot of training through metrics, are they getting the support that are they getting basic skills instruction, which is what Title II is designed for? You know, I think that that's another one of those things where having the conversation about how best to use that. So if you and this is my thinking out loud, so we don't have anything in the distance learning policy yet, and I think Christine and I would need to discuss this with the distance education technical assistance, or the digital literacy and distance education technical assistance project. You know, if there were basic skills instruction wrapped around a matrix training, I think we could look at it, but just simply saying to somebody, go do this training on metrics, I would have concerns about having that be distance education approved curricula.
That's what
I will, yeah, that was kind of my thinking through the question off the top of my head type thing. So we'll look into it. But what I don't want is for like Title I to send people who are not easy to work with to an adult ed program and say, okay, well, you just do this training with them because the Title I people don't want to have to put time and energy into it. And I also don't want them to make the assumption that Title II is going to do the training for them type thing.
And that's what
Kelly,
I was explained to them yesterday, was it would have to be basic skills instruction. It's not something we can just say to them, oh, go do this.
Right.
And you know, just trying to explain that to them. But I did say that I would ask the question and, you know, see if that's something down the road that might be a possibility. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I would say you can have those, you know, conversations. I don't know if Kaylin or Chrissy or who's your workforce TA, but you know, they can support you in those conversations if you would like. You know, feel free to draw them in if that's helpful.
Yep. Thank you.
We have another question in the chat about assessments. Do the additional funds support training and administration of assessments such as a SIRI as well as CASAS and TAPE? I think a SIRI is the funds support distance assessment and computer-based assessment, and I believe the SIRI is a paper-based assessment. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. I did say. Hold on a second. I'm going to be thinking through things as
we're going to put you on mute.
I'm putting you on mute as I So for the programs, I would say if that is something that you want to do, and for those of you on the webinar who don't have family literacy, the ASIRI is an assessment that is used for evaluating interactive literacy activities and those type of things. So this is a family literacy related question. I would say if that's something that you would want to do, you would need to fully explain it in your proposal. And the advisor and I can kind of handle that on a case-by-case basis. You know, in that case, it would have to be part of relieving teachers from having to do that work. So it's not just like, oh, we can get more money to get more computers to, or, you know, get more money if it's not improving an assessment.
Any other questions? Feel free to unmute and ask your question. We have another question about assessment from what Christine said. The assessor isn't funded for paper-based testing at all. I think that some paper-based testing was allowed. Yeah, that's why we muted ourselves so we could
we could talk
together before I said something stupid.
No. So the idea, it supports paper-based testing only if it is to pay for an individual who is relieving teachers from assessing themselves, from having to assess their own students. So if you are going to hire a staff member who will go out to class sites or will go into the community to meet a student outside of a class time or at a class site to administer the assessments so that the teacher does not have to administer the assessment. In that case, yes, that would be allowable. As a reminder, though, the real focus of the funding is also increasing your capacity to do to use the computer-based administrations of assessments, whether that's in person or remote. Something else I'd kind of like to stress related to that, though, is the idea of the additional funds is to decrease the burden of assessment on the students and the teachers so that program staff are going out to class sites to be able to assess students instead of having the teachers have to assess them. Or even more ideally, to have that individual meet with students outside of class time at a time that works for the student so that we can assess the student without the student having to miss class. But that the student isn't being asked to come into some central location and find time in their schedule, but rather the program is saying, okay, we're going to find time in our schedule and we're going to find a location that works for the student. So maybe it's finding room in a local library, or maybe you have a partner that will allow you to use space to assess students locally at a time that works for the students. So this isn't like, okay, we're going to have a whole bunch of computers sitting in a room at our office and people can come in to use it. No, this is like we're providing staffing and resources so that we as a program can go out and meet our students' needs and not put the burden on the teachers to do that. Okay, well, I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you all have a very happy, healthy, safe holiday season.
Can I? This
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was trying to type it and then it was ending. So I'm looking at the adult education, the staff maintenance intake form, and there's one question that has adult education start date. Can you so I'm clear about what that question's asking for.
Okay, so there are two dates that you put in the system for staff, right? There's the program start date, which would be the time that the person began working, Shirley, with Temple, right? But suppose that teacher already had a staff file because they had worked at one of the other Philadelphia agencies before they came to you.
Okay.
So their start date, their adult ed start date might be before their program, their agency start date.
Okay, it's their
So
profession
those,
for their own career, when they started. Or
right.
with a PDE funded project, let's say they were in adult education but not funded by PDE, would they put that in?
They can, yes.
Yeah, they can.
Okay,
And what I would recommend is going to the manual and glossary
yeah,
and reviewing that. And then if you have any questions after that, generally, because it's kind of data and definition versus policy, you could contact MIS, the eData tech support.
okay,
As a reminder, they are off for the next 2 weeks, I believe. Penn State closes down, so.
all right, thank you.
Yep. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Yes, I see a couple of happy holidays. Happy holidays to you all, and we'll talk to you next year. Please be safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.